Hi, and welcome to this episode of Freedom Hub's Medical Cannabis Series. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, and today we got special guest Narith Panh with us, and he's with Dragonfly in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's had a great background in the field of professional consulting, branding, worked with all kinds of Fortune 500 companies and the like. But his life changed on a certain day because his brother had a major accident, and suddenly he had to jump in the frame and become a caretaker. And that's where things really began to change. So he's going to give us a rundown on his background and kind of what led him to today and where things are going to go into the future. So Narith, thanks so much for coming here today.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you so much for having me. And thank you for allowing me to share my story here with everybody. Just real quick rundown on me and a little bit of my background is, me and my family came here to America in 1980 as Cambodian refugees. I was actually born 3 months after my family had, was able to get sponsored here into America. They were living in a refugee camp for about 2 years on the border of Thailand and Cambodia, and there was a horrific civil war and genocide that was going on out there. My family ended up here in Salt Lake City, Utah, of all places, and this has been my home for basically the last 40 years. And growing up in Utah, being around a predominant religion has a huge sense of community around here. And that was the same community that welcomed my family with open arms and really gave us an opportunity to live the American dream. So it's been incredible to grow up in this place and have such great support and have such a great community that cares so much about taking care of one another. So that was something that's really stuck with me and really helped build my character and really given me that sense of appreciation for wanting to give back and giving other people, that might be similar to me, to have an opportunity to live their American dream. So that's a little bit about my background living here in Utah. One thing growing up in this place my whole life is we're no stranger to the opioid epidemic here. One interesting thing about Utah is we have a very predominant religion here. About 60% of our population is of the LDS faith. And that faith doesn't believe in drinking, smoking, no alcohol, no caffeine, none of those types of stimulants for your body. So what that ends up happening is now what's okay is to actually getting medicine from your medical provider. That is okay to be able to get anti-anxiety drugs, antidepressant drugs, whatever it is to make you feel better, whatever you need to do to help release that stress or the challenges that you're going through in life. So with that, we, between 2013 and 2018, Utah had one of the highest rates of opioid related deaths in the nation. And I think a lot of that is tied and correlated to the fact that there are no other alternatives for a lot of people of this predominant religion. So that was something that would, obviously has shaped my life and ultimately, to the accident that you had mentioned, really led me to the night on April 20th of 2019, where I got a phone call. I was actually in Miami and at a bachelor party for one of my best friends and got a call and found out that my brother was involved in an auto pedestrian hit and run accident. The driver was driving at 40 miles an hour, hit him as he was walking across the street and drove off. Fortunately, there was an EMT that happened to be down the street that saw him, was able to get him to a hospital, and was able to get him the healthcare and the service that he needed. He was able to recover from that. And that was really incredible to be able to see that. But obviously, having my brother, laying there in the hospital bed, pumped up in morphine, I couldn't help but think, I don't want my brother to be the next statistic. The story of, my son, high school star athlete, got into an accident and they got some pain medication and all of a sudden he's a heroin addict on the street. Sounds very extreme, but so that's actually a very normal story here in Utah, unfortunately. So that's how easy that can happen. In fact, actually 80% of heroin users that are out there started on legal prescription drugs. So I see my brother laying there on the hospital bed. I didn't want him to be another statistic. So fortunately, I was knowledgeable about cannabis. I was knowledgeable about the potential benefits of cannabis, and I was looking for a safer alternative than putting him in on opiates. So I had the courage to send out for a care package from California and sent some really high dose medical cannabis and CBD and THC balance ratios. And through that entire 9-month recovery process, not a single pain pill was administered to my brother. He used medical cannabis through that entire recovery. And if you saw him today, you don't even know that he was involved in this accident. And I 100% believe that that was because of medical cannabis, and medical cannabis saved my brother's life. He could have been another victim, just like so many other people. And that's something that really hit home for me and really changed a career shift in my life, being able to have that actually impact me so close, and really thinking about how many other people are in the same situation as my family, but don't have the courage, don't have the resources, don't have the knowledge that cannabis is even a safer alternative. You know, if your doctor isn't telling you you should try this, you're likely not going to be looking at that as an option. So you're just going to go straight down the opiate route, just like everybody else. So how many other families, how many other lives could have been saved if they just knew there was another option to help save their family? So that's ultimately what changed my life, changed my career. I left corporate America and joined the cannabis space, and got a lot of flack for it, got a lot of eye rolls from friends, from family, from colleagues. Like, what are you doing? You've built this career in this profession, and you're gonna go sell weed? I'm like, hey, it's not weed. It's cannabis, and it's medicine, and it can save people's lives. So I really, having that experience gave me the courage to do that. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have ever made that leap. I probably would have been the same scared person like everybody else and stuck in the stigma of, I've spent my entire life building this professional career. I don't want people to think I'm just some, drug dealer on the street. So being an advocate, being somebody who's had this impact in my life, I feel that personal sense of responsibility to share this with others and help as many people as I can.
So that's fantastic. Truthfully, with you moving forward, like a lot of people, they discover a new scientific whatever by accident, or some fatal thing occurs, but you were ready, you had knowledge, like you said. So, circumstance came at the right time for you to make that shift. So you've been doing this now for a while. What do you see happen? Is things change, more people becoming receptive? Is it all by word of mouth, or how is the word now starting to get out in a bigger way?
Yeah, right now, there are obviously some challenges when it comes to the medical cannabis space. There's obviously a lot of restrictions when it comes to marketing and advertising, in this space. So it's really hard to get awareness out there. Like many other companies, you can just, go put a campaign out there. You can send out newsletters, you can do billboards, radio advertisements, TV advertisements, and spread that awareness. But that's unfortunately something that we can't do in the medical cannabis space. So it requires us to be a little bit more creative about how we engage with the community. And that ultimately, that's where it starts, is with community engagement and education. I think people are out there hungry for another alternative, right? This opioid epidemic is not some deep, dark secret that nobody knows about. Everybody is aware of this. And every day in our pharmacy, we get somebody who comes in who is deathly afraid of getting into opiates because they've lost a friend or a family member, and they're here and they want to learn about cannabis, and people are eager to learn. So we really try to provide as many educational opportunities and educational events as possible. And here in Utah, one of the unique things about our market is that there is actually a pharmacist at our pharmacy. We don't call them dispensaries. We are actually medical cannabis pharmacies. So we have real medical providers with real medical knowledge and education, and can help consult and advise you on perhaps other prescription drugs that you might be taking. How does cannabis interact with some of those drugs? Because there are impacts, and it's important that we educate all of our patients on what those potential dangers, threats, and things that they need to think about. So here in Utah, we are 100% medical program. You have to be able to get prescribed from a doctor. Now, one of the challenges is that, there is a short list of qualifying medical conditions, and that's something we're actively working and lobbying for and trying to get more conditions approved. Because right now, it's really unfair to say, oh, well, PTSD, you can use medical cannabis. You have anxiety, you can't, right? You have insomnia, you can't, right? So we're kind of picking winners and losers in terms of who can actually use medical cannabis. So the reality is, if we want to talk about cannabis as a medicine, who better to prescribe that than your own medical provider, right? That has been dealing with your medical history, knows your other drugs, knows your healthcare, and can consult and advise you about whether or not medical cannabis can actually help you. That's where that relationship should reside, not from people that are legislators in Congress, that are, Department of Health officials that say, yeah, I think you should use this and you can't. That should be involved with the doctor. So that's what we're really seeing here in the state of Utah, is that doctor-patient relationship. So we can actually have real healthcare when it comes to cannabis, as opposed to kind of the wild, wild west in a lot of the other states that are recreational, where products are just flooding the market, right? It's a chase after the highest THC, the most potent product that's out there. And there are some real dangerous concerns about that, about this chase for THC and stronger and more concentrated and more isolated compounds. At one point, the poppy, seeds and the opium plant was just a plant. And we got a hold of that and we started isolating it and compounding it and making it incredibly strong. And now look in the situation that we're at today. So that's one of the concerns, is we've got a plant medicine like cannabis. If we keep going down this route, where does it stop? Where does it end? And we need to really treat cannabis as real medicine. And I think that's where this next wave of cannabis legalization is actually going to come first, is let's get it off of Schedule 1. Let's reschedule cannabis so we can actually start doing real research, right? Real clinical trials, and having real efficacy on these cannabis products that are out there in the market. So that way we can provide a safer, healthier alternative for our patients.
That's so accurate about the idea of it being between you and your doctor, because in healthcare in general, that's the more important relationship. The fallacy, like when you talked about compounding to like the nth degree, was we've allowed insurance and other things to intrude. Suddenly they're the decision maker in your healthcare, not you and your doctor. So just as well, we need to be back to that level here as well. Let's conclude a little bit by saying, where does Utah sit in the whole scope of things? Again, most people don't even think of Utah as a medical marijuana state, but where does it sit in the cannabis world? How do all the other states rank? And where do you think you are as far as like being number one, as far as sophistication in the marketplace?
Yeah, I appreciate that segue into there, because most people don't think, oh, Utah medical cannabis, right? Like, and honestly, for me, I thought Utah would have been one of the last states to actually approve medical cannabis. So I'm really proud of all our decision makers and all of our legislatures and everybody, regulators that are involved in this, because they could see that this was actually a benefit and was able to bring this program to the state. And there are some really unique things about the program here in Utah that I really do believe that it is one of the best in class programs that are out there. So one of the things here in this limited medical market is we actually allow the sale of flower. There are other markets out there that don't allow flower, that are only medical states. But here in the state of Utah, I think our regulators understood that there is a lot of medical benefit in whole plant medicine, in the actual flower itself. But if we're really talking, about medicine, right? No medical provider is really going to say smoking something is going to be safe for you. So here in Utah, actually smoking cannabis is actually prohibited with the use of an open flame. So what that means is, in order to consume flower, we use dry herb vaporizers. And those dry herb vaporizers are essentially devices, handheld devices, that heat up your cannabis in a small, tiny little convection oven, heats up those trichomes that has all of that lovely medicine and cannabinoids and terpenes, and it turns it into a vapor so that you can safely inhale that vapor and still get all the benefits of that whole plant medicine. So that's huge. One other, incredible thing that we allow here as well too is edibles. Edibles in the form of what's called gelatinous cubes, right? So basically just tiny little gummies. And the main reason for limiting that type of medicinal dosage form is the fact that our medical providers don't want to have this wild, wild west of edible consumption of chocolate bars and gummy bears and gummy worms and things that ultimately are appealing to children. And as a medical provider that swears on the Hippocratic Oath, right, that we are to do no harm, we can't be putting products out there that a child could accidentally walk by their parents' stash, think it's candy, eat it, and all of a sudden they're in the hospital. Right. So that we have a moral obligation and responsibility to make sure that if we're talking about cannabis as medicine, that we're making it as safe as possible. And we're thinking about all these potential challenges and issues that could arise. And so that way we're making safe, conscious decisions on the types of products that we're able to make. So that's really, really important here in Utah. Yeah, and also here in Utah, Utah's also limited in terms of the number of licenses that are here as well too. And that can obviously be up for debate about how many licenses should be awarded, yada, yada. But you look at a lot of the other states who just opened up all these licenses, and you just seen an incredible crash in those markets. And, there's companies that are closing left or right that can't even stay open and operating in business. Even look at California. There are legal operators that can't even compete with some of the legacy free market operators that are out there. So there's a lot of challenges in these business models that are out there, but I think Utah really got it right in terms of making sure that we don't overflood the market with bad characters, people who are just in cannabis for the money, because there's a lot of opportunists out there, but really, making sure that people that are really focused on patients, patient advocacy, making the right decisions, that's what's really important. So I think Utah has a really, really unique program that can be a model for a lot of other programs that are out there in the nation.
So in other words, Utah, who knew, right? That's great. We're going to definitely start to pay a lot more close attention to what's going on over there. So I'll tell you, it's been great having you here today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you and everything that you're doing.